Okay, this is lesson 27 from Algebra 1, domain and range mapping. So, we talked about domain and range before, and it has to relate to functions. Remember the math word functions? It has to do with like a math machine, right? We put ingredients in, stuff pops out. Y'all remember that? Kind of, yes? Okay. So the domain is what's called the inputs. So it's the ingredients, and the range is the outputs. It's what pops out, right? And I talked about how it's kind of like... let's say I had this machine in the front of the class, a math machine, and let's say I put ingredients like sugar, flour, eggs.
Cake mix. Can we do cake mix?
Alright, whatever. Cake mix, alright. What's going to pop out of the other end?
Cake.
Cake, right? Is a cake and a hamburger going to pop out of the other end? No, that wouldn't function correctly, right? That wouldn't make any sense, right? Just like if I were to put let's say I was going to put, carne asada, some tomatoes, onions, lime, salt, pepper, jalapeno, tortillas. What's going to pop out of the other end?
Burrito.
Burrito or tacos, right? Okay. I didn't say cheese, not a quesadilla, right?
Oh, you have to have cheese in the taco.
I didn't but did I put it in my machine? No. So
therefore it's not there.
Therefore, it's not going to pop out a taco or a quesadilla. Okay? So, in the same way, domain is like the ingredients, okay? When you think of math, domain are your ingredients, okay? So, that's like your cake mix, right? Whatever you put in there, sugar, eggs, maybe milk, oil, flour. That's all going to go together. That's your ingredients, that's the domain, and then the range is just the one thing that pops out. Cake pops out of my machine, right? Does that make sense? Today we're going to ask ourselves, what are the ingredients and what pops out, okay? Does that make sense? Two questions we're going to ask. What are the ingredients and what pops out? Meaning, what's the domain, the ingredients, and what pops out, the range? What are the two questions? What are the ingredients and what pops out? Again, what are the two questions?
What are the ingredients and what pops out?
Good. Those are the two questions, okay? What happens if we have more than one thing that pops out, like 2 or 3 things that pop out? Is it a function? No. Okay? It's broken. The machine's broken, right? We don't want a broken machine. You don't want to be putting ingredients for a taco in there and then nails come out, right? Because you're like, I want to eat. It's making nails again, right? We don't want that, okay? That'd be weird. It doesn't function correctly. Anyways, here we go. These are the steps. If you're on the video, you should know to stop here, and here we go. Shh. Okay. So, these are tables, okay, and we call this a map, okay, a domain and range map, okay? So, the X is up here. X's always have to do with the inputs or your domain. And Y's have to do with your range. That's your output, okay? And so what this is saying is if I put a 1 into my machine, I get it pops out a 2. If I put a 2 in my machine, it pops out a 3. If I put a 3 in my machine, it pops out a 4. And if I put a 5 in my machine, I get a 6. Does that make sense? So, are there any inputs that cause more than one output? Nope, it doesn't. So, the way I want to figure out what my ingredients are, I just go from least to greatest, okay, on my domains. My ingredients are, the smallest one is 1, this biggest one is 5. Those are all the ingredients. So my domain could go from 1 to 5 and includes those numbers. So I'm going to put these things called brackets, okay, and that includes my domain. So I put D, colon, that's my domain. It goes from 1 to 5, okay? Smallest number is 1. That's okay. That's a good question. There's no 4. Is that a big deal? No, but what number is the biggest number it goes to? 5. Good question, okay? Sometimes that does make a difference, and this example doesn't. Range, okay, what's the smallest what's the smallest output that comes out? 2, right? What's the biggest output? 6, okay? And it's all in order. So this was actually a real nice problem because I made it real nice. Now look at number 2. Same inputs, Same outputs, but look what happens. Let's say I turn the machine on again tomorrow. I put a 1 in, I get a 2 again, right? I put a 2 in, I put ingredients for a cake. What comes out? How many outputs come out? 2, right? So look at the last step on your steps. What happens if I have 2 outputs? What do we know if there's 2?
It's not a function.
Not a function. Just like if I were to put ingredients for a cake, and I get cake and nails, right? Is it functioning correctly? So it's not a function. So we wouldn't even have to write domain and range here. We just say not a function. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm just gonna write that. So just turn your neighbor really quickly, explain what a function is, inputs, outputs, domain, range, and so forth. Ready, set, go. All right, so we're going to do these on our paper today. Identify the domain and range. Number 3, okay, here are some numbers, -4, -2, 1, and 7. Let's do this one together. Range is 6, 0, 9, and 12. Okay, on all of our ingredients, is there any time that if you put an ingredient in that you get 2 products or outputs? No. So is this a function? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Okay. What are the ingredients from smallest to greatest? What's the smallest ingredient up there? -4. Good. So this one's supposed to be easy. Which one's the largest one? 7, right? Okay, that's our domain, right? What's the range? What's the smallest output? Oh, good. Is it in order already up there? No. So we have to sometimes get in order. What's the biggest one? 12, okay. And there you go. Domain and range. That means the inputs go from -4 to 7. The range is from 0 to 12, right? Does that make sense? That means it's all like, oh, I could put this many ingredients in. This is the range of ingredients from cheapest to largest, and these are the products I make from cheapest to largest. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, cool. Next one, number 4. This one's a little harder. Okay, number 4. Looking at all our arrows, we have 4 ingredients. Is there any time that one ingredient makes 2 products?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
What do you mean no?
Yes.
No.
Is there any time that these ingredients make 2 of these?
Yeah.
What about this one?
0.
Oh.
Yes.
Trying to trick you. Think carefully.
No.
No, right?
Oh, maybe.
It's not the same number. So, let's say I wanted to make this product that's a 0. Let's say it's a cake that looks like a 0. I can make this cake how many ways? 2 ways. I could put a 10 into my machine and make this, or I could put this ingredient in. Does that make sense? So you were right. So is this a function? Yes.
How?
What?
Okay. For the
Wait.
y, is it a function or no?
It is, yeah. Because you're asking yourself, is there any time that you get 2 things from one ingredient? Am I getting 2 things from one ingredient on this example?
No.
No. Okay. But can I make one product 2 different ways?
Yes.
Yeah. I can make
Like
cookies
a burrito and a taco.
by putting all the ingredients together and baking them, and I get the same cookie, right? Or I could go to the store and just buy the pre-made cookie and make the same cookie. Does that make sense? Okay, so is this a function? Yeah, it's a function. Okay. So, if it's a function, let's keep going here. What's the smallest number in our ingredients? -13, good. What's the biggest number in our ingredients? 28, okay. So this one's not in order, so this is our domain. And what's the smallest number in our outputs? 0. What's the biggest number? 22, okay. This is our range, okay.
21. Bless you.
Excuse me, thank you. All right, continuing on, number 5. Sometimes you get the numbers like this. This is the last one because this is all pretty easy, okay? Identify the domain and range, okay? So let's say this is a function, okay? We're going to assume it's a function. We don't have any arrows here, but what's the smallest number in our domain? -5, right? So this one's already in order. So one way to do this is you could just look at the smallest number, -5. And what's the biggest number? -2. It's already in order, which is nice. It's just a different way to show it. And then our range, what's the smallest number?
10.
10, biggest number?
40.
Okay, good. All right. So that's our domain and range. Now, you know, this isn't showing mapping, but let's say we wanted to map these numbers. And let's say that this was the domain and range. One way you could do it is just you make your own table, X and Y table. And you just could put the smallest to biggest, -5, -4, -3, and -2. Now, I'm not going to do this for today's examples, but let's say you had a machine, okay, a math machine, and you read a story, and the story is like, here's the machine, here's the potential inputs and potential outputs, and then you're like, and then I tell you, you try the machine the first time, and the first time you try the machine, you put in the ingredient of -5, and you get 10, okay? Does that make sense? And then you read my story some more, and then you're like, oh, cool, what if I put in a -3 into the machine? Well, if you put in -3, you get a 20, okay? And then so you draw an arrow. And then the next sentence I would say, next time you try the machine, you put in a -2. If you put in a -2, you get a 40, so then you would draw an arrow from -2 to 40. And then the last time you try the machine is -4, and you put in 30, and you get out a 30, okay? So this is a way to map. You would read the story and figure out what comes out of the machine, okay? Does that make sense? Yep, okay. Sometimes in the story, though, I might say, and then you try -5 one more time, and you think you're going to get 10, but you actually get 20 the second time. Is this a function? No, it's not. Okay, before it was, right? But this time it's not, because we got two outputs. Okay, so this is more of a conceptual problem. We're thinking about inputs, outputs, ingredients, and products, right? Is it functioning correctly or not? All right, and we use that a lot. You know, if you're a manager, if you have like a machine that makes something, then you need to be able to know how if it functions or not. Yes.
Wait, if it doesn't have the box, do we have to draw it or no?
Yeah, the whole purpose of this example is to show you, like, sometimes you have to draw the box and create the map, okay? Because sometimes I'm going to write a story for you and say, oh, let's pretend you had a machine and you put the ingredient of this or that in, okay? And you made that output. Okay, and sometimes I might use it with numbers, and sometimes I might say, what if, you know, it's actual ingredients? Let's say you put bunnies in the machine and you put marshmallows, and you get out marshmallow bunnies.
That's terrifying.
And you're like, okay, cool. So then you would that's actually a great example. So then you would like know, okay, so he has inputs and outputs, and one of the inputs he has is bunnies, and he puts marshmallows at one time, okay? So then you would make that one of your inputs. Another time you put bunnies and marshmallows, you get a mess, okay? So it doesn't work. The first time you get marshmallow bunnies. Okay? So if you put the same ingredient, two ingredients in the first time, you could get two outputs, which means it's not functioning correctly. It means the bunnies are turning into something else.
Mutated.
Okay? Anyways, that's just an example, and it's really the concept we're talking about. All right, this concludes this lesson. I'll post this online for you.